as like our industry has evolved so much, so has the role of the filmmaker. Like the role of the filmmaker, I think, has really evolved into, you know, you're not just creating the imagery, but like they're also leaning into you for strategy. They're also leaning into you and like really banking on you having a strong point of view that can help guide their decision making that they might be struggling with. So when you show up like that, when you show up of like, okay, I hear what your need is, I hear what your problem is, I hear what your ideas of solutions are. What do you think about this or this or this or this? Here are some other ways we can be approaching this thing. And then all of a sudden, what you've done just by doing that is you have made yourself, you have graduated from being a commodity to being an extremely valuable resource.
That's something that you're rarely gonna get asked for, but that as you step into it, to your point, it's like it shifts the whole nature of the relationship. You know, I think Blair Enns talks about it as the difference between being a vendor and being an expert, and like that actual sort of expert relationship.
They're hiring you for a reason, right? They're hiring you because you know more than they do about production. Otherwise, they'd be doing it themselves. They're paying for you to help lead and help guide them.
It's a lot easier to go like, this is what you should be doing. This is what everyone's missing out on. This is the 6 things that you really are going to fall behind if you don't do. And it's like, it works. It's emotionally hooky. It has leverage. It'll stop someone in their tracks. Is that the world we want to be living in? Is that how I want to show up? Is that what I would want someone else to be reflecting on me all the time?
For a time, I was working at a global ad agency, and there was stuff happening all the time where I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is, like, this is not okay.
I always like having a little bit of a fun, very open-ended, I think of it like a break shot when you're playing pool or something, you know? It's like, which way is this thing gonna go? So my question for you is the sky falling?
No.
Why?
The sky is an illusion. No, the sky is not falling. We're always like, gosh, how do I want to take this one? The sky is falling, feels like it's falling when we put meaning to a situation or to a circumstance. When we like really layer in our emotions to what's happening around us and try to do that in a way to find meaning, to help ourselves ground, to help ourselves make sense of things, to help ourselves like make decisions on like, okay, what are we going to do from here? And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? When in reality, there are always like different fluctuations in the sky. It's always moving. It's energy just like we are. Like we're literally made up of matter. Matter is made up of energy. Like it's always constantly moving. But sometimes I think like in business, it could feel like, okay, I'm on like a really good trajectory. Things are going the way I want. They're going up, 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 up. And then like plummet. Something happens out of my control. Or that I'm perceiving to be out of my control. And so I think that is something that we're experiencing now. We're experiencing something that feels very out of control. And when our emotions are high, our intelligence is really, really low. So it's difficult to like think our way out of situations like this. So like for me, I try to remind my clients all the time. It's like, okay, let's remind ourselves of what is in our control. How are we looking at every circumstance, every scenario as an opportunity? Where is the value in this for us? And I think when you start to think that way and reframe how you're thinking a little bit, it starts to feel a little bit lighter. It starts to feel like possibility is possible. And it allows you to kind of like check the emotional charge and like bring it down a little bit so that you can actually like tap into your logical mind, think clearly, and take really focused action instead of reaction. I
love that. So what is happening out there though? Like I know for myself in the last 12 years of doing this, it's like, it feels like this massive tectonic shift, especially over the last 5 years. And social content, agencies, the stretched out spectrum now of where it used to be this very clear like professional to consumer gap, and now it just feels like this really blurry line from UGC all the way up into really big work. So like, what have you seen in the objective world shifting outside of the narrativization of it as the end of the world?
Yeah. So what I am seeing shifting is several things. I mean, we had COVID, we had strikes, most recently we have fires, now we have like some economic stuff going on in our politics and government. And there's always like a trickle-down effect to situations like that. Trickle-down effect in production, commercial production specifically, and like other areas of production as well. And when we're met with so much uncertainty, what I have observed with our industry is like, dang, we're so resilient. Like COVID is a great example of this. COVID, like remote production, virtual production, like that wasn't even like on anybody's radar until we were faced with a problem and then we created a solution around it. And so because of things like that, it's like this it feels like a very rapid evolution of production and how we operate in production, how we have to think now today, like in production as well, because those challenges that we overcame and created solutions around now has educated agencies, has educated clients of like, oh, we can do things faster. We can do things more efficiently. We can do things more leanly. Great. Let's keep going. Let's keep going with that. And with that comes speed. And when there's speed, like there's this like whole, but before I go down that path, there's this whole other side of the thing as well, of like consumer behavior, buyer behavior. That's all shifted because of these things as well. So it's been like what feels like would be change that we experience over years and years and years and years and years in a very, very short amount of time. And so there's all of this catch up happening. Agencies and brands are catching up with like really adapting to buyer and consumer behavior, and the need to put themselves out there, to market themselves, to feed their audience with everything that they want and that they need so that they can sustain themselves as businesses, right? And so now that production moves faster, and now there's this like almost what feels like an insatiable craving from consumers for the brands that they have affinity for. And so these agencies, these brands are like, I need more, I need more, I need more, I need it faster. To the point where sometimes it's like the media and like the media strategy and the placement of these assets isn't even like figured out by the time you're actually rolling on set. So it's kind of like we're sprinting and trying to catch up. And like as soon as we feel like we're caught up, we're already behind again. So that's what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing here. And there's a lot that's expected now from production: more, faster, cheaper. It's not just like one of the three. It's all of the three.
Yeah, that makes sense. That resonates a lot with my experience. Something I'm curious your perspective on is, I feel like in the last few years, I've felt that, we talked about like not becoming reactive as craftspeople and creatives. And I feel like a lot of times it feels like my role, my differentiating role in a project is also to bring the team back down from being really reactive. Because I feel like a lot of times it feels like there's just this like sort of like manic, like we got to have 30 things and we got to post 7 things a day. And we've got this idea that someone gave us and we don't really know where it's going yet. And like, let's just make it. And it's like, deep breath. What are we doing here? Because there is a lot of opportunity here, but all of us playing chickens with our head cut off, whack-a-mole, is not a great use of resources or energy. And yeah, I guess that's just like, I've felt like a lot of that upstream anxiety and like trying to help mitigate that and understand that and go, help me understand what you're actually aiming for here. And like, how can we actually serve this? Because it feels like there's just a lot of spinning in circles and things getting spooled up and things getting cut down. And I don't know if that's just my world or if that's representative of in general, but like how much are you seeing that and how can people help navigate that? Because I definitely feel like a lot of the other creatives that I talk to are like, I just keep getting handed half-baked stuff on paper that I don't really know what to do with, and I don't really know how to speak into this, and like what is my role in like helping create clarity and understanding. And a lot of the time I find that people just don't have answers. Like to your point, it's like you'd be like, where's this going? And they're like, we don't know. And you're like, well, that kind of makes doing our job hard.
Yeah, exactly. And so one, I don't know where this quote came from, but it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so when you're feeling all of this like trickle down anxiety, this like urgency from your clients, this urgency is kind of like, it's like truly like chicken with their head cut off, like running around sometimes. It's just like, oh, we have to do something. I don't know what it is. Help us. I also look at this as like someone needs to do exactly what you said. Someone needs to say like, okay, let's like align, let's level set. Let me hear what your needs are. Let me hear why these are your needs. Let me like really dig into this a little bit and like just give me like you can accomplish so much in 15 minutes. You don't need 5 hours with them. You can accomplish so much in 15 minutes of just asking really empowering, questions so that you can get to the root of what they haven't maybe been able to actually access or articulate yet. So I think when you have a client that is presenting them that way, this is a huge opportunity for you to step into your leadership because as like our industry has evolved so much, so has the role of the filmmaker. Like the role of the filmmaker, or the photographer, I think has really evolved into, you're not just creating the imagery, but like they're also leaning into you for strategy. They're also leaning into you and like really banking on you having a strong point of view that can help guide their decision making that they might be struggling with. So when you show up like that, when you show up of like, okay, I hear what your need is, I hear what your problem is, I hear what your ideas of solutions are. What do you think about this or this or this or this? Here are some other ways we can be approaching this thing. And then all of a sudden, what you've done just by doing that is you have made yourself, you have graduated from being a commodity to being an extremely valuable resource to them. And so when we start to kind of reframe our minds of like, the client's not like giving me what I need and like, they don't know what they're doing and like the budget sucks and like all this jazz, to coming and approaching it from a place of service, from a place of I can help you, from a place of I've got your back, from a place of like, this might make me uncomfortable and this might feel a little different for me. And like, this isn't, what I, typically do, to like leaning into that is only going to position you to generate more future work, to get the referrals that feel like they might have like dried up, all of that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It reminds me of a conversation I was having last week with a DP who I'm doing some mentorship work with and who's really looking to step his stuff up. And one of the biggest things that came up was just like coming to the tape, not waiting to be asked to do prep basically or have a perspective, just like stepping into the conversation with those questions, like understanding creative probing questions and then going like, oh, we can do this, we can do this. Let's talk about color. Let's talk about light. And to just sort of step into that leadership agency position of being an authority to whatever level you can in the project that you're at. But my experience has been like, that's something that you're rarely gonna get asked for, but that as you step into it, to your point, it's like it shifts the whole nature of the relationship. I think Blair Enns talks about it as the difference between being a vendor and being an expert, and like that actual sort of expert relationship. But I saw that like micro case study with a project that we did last year. Got called by Johnson & Johnson to do this project, which had traditionally been run through a big agency. Big agency wanted to big agency it and wanted like $200,000 to do a 3-minute patient story. And they were just like, this doesn't really make sense for what we're trying to do. But it was one of those funny things where they came back and their goal was to do it for like 15. And I was just like, that's a big jump. That's a big jump. And like, I feel like help me understand, like, we're working with relatively large talent here. Like, I think we want this to be a smooth experience for them. I don't think that we all want to be like the ones setting up lights and asking interview questions and doing all this, you know, like what is the goal here? And went through actually understanding all that, and sort of still got the order from on high above even anyone I was working with, that they were like, no, we're trying to hit this number. It was one of those times where I was like, hey, look, I totally get it. I just am not confident that we're going to be able to execute what you're asking for. And like, I can't show up fully at that point. And so like, if that's where you need to be, totally get it. No harm, no foul. But like, this is why that's functionally impossible also, just like with what we're trying to do with locations in the city and stuff. Like, it's not, the math doesn't math. And I was like, we probably should be here, but like, here's sort of the compromise. And the reply I got was just like, oh, we can make your first here work. The like price anchored throw out thing. So they went from way down to triple and a halving their budget, and we got no real pushback from the rest of the process after that. And then like, it was funny because the agency was still kind of involved because they were involved in the talent side, but they weren't involved in production. The story I tell myself, which may or may not be true, was that there was kind of a weird, like, they resented us a little bit for stealing that part of the pie, but I don't know if that's true. But so then there was another point where like they came in and they were like, hey, when are we going to get storyboards? And client came back to me and was like, hey, are we doing storyboards? And I was like, hey, here's my perspective. We're doing someone's real story in a real location where it's like an interview B-roll sort of deal. We're talking about the scenes, themes, things that have to get conveyed here, and some of that we're not even really going to know until the location is locked, and these other things like what we can do in this space, right? Like person in bed having a heart arrhythmia or whatever, you know, like we're gonna have to massage it with him because he's not an actor too, right? So it's like, what's going to feel natural for you? And so I was just like, we could do boards. They're going to be entirely made up. People are going to get attached to them. We're going to get there on the day, and people are going to wonder why it doesn't look like what's on the boards. And we probably just should have never done boards to begin with. And so I was like, my personal perspective is that it's not worth doing, and it's a waste of money. And it's part of why this whole mission of making this thing not $200,000 for no reason is like, we don't need to do boards. We have a highly skilled team. And they went back and told the agency, like, yeah, we're not doing boards. And like, I've just seen more and more of that. That's like the uncomfortable, sometimes even conversations, these kind of like conflict adjacent conversations do shift the whole relationship, and do shift to where now, instead of this antagonistic relationship, it's like, oh no, that makes sense. And now we're understanding you're serving our budget goals, you're serving our timing goals, you're serving we don't want stakeholders to get pulled off track. Like, we want to show them something that they're happy with. And so that's been a big edge that we've really been stepping into, especially over this last year, has been like, you do sometimes get crazy briefs, or you get crazy budgets, or you get whatever. And you're like, instead of just kind of throwing birds and walking away, it's like, help me understand what you're trying to do here. Cause like, we're all on the same team at the end of the day. And how do we make this a team sport again? And then even be transparent about, like, we were upfront about like, hey, one of the things we're not doing, we're not going to have 5 PAs and a crazy crafty thing and all this. Like, we're coming in and out for 4 hours to maximize this thing. Like, here's our sort of strike team and how we're going to get it done. And they were like, no, we love this. Like, we don't need to all sit around and be wined and dined. And so it was really cool for me because I had felt that. Like, I had been in just so many of those projects where I was on the crew side, and I felt like people had just avoided having too many conversations, that you were like, someone just didn't, not even push back, but didn't engage. They just kind of took it, you know, and we're like, oh, well, this is what we're being told to do, so this is what we're going to do. And then you end up on set and you're like, we're spending $100,000 and this is broken on paper. And that for me was one of the things that, you know, back in 2020 when I, you know, had been through this whole big DP trajectory, it was like, I love making stuff, but like setting people up for success feels like a really important thing for me, because I've been in that position so many times where we're just not set up for success. And if I stay in this role, I'm not really going to get that leverage, that relationship to come do that. And so that's been a really big thing for me wading into those conversations, has been like, hey, we're all people, we're all on the same team. We don't have to emperor's new clothes this whole thing. Like, let's just be really upfront about what's going on here. And I feel like that's one of the biggest opportunities right now, because there is a certain amount of, again, story I tell myself. A lot of clients are sick of paying a bunch of agencies a ton of money that they don't need for a ton of stuff. And they're open to new ideas. And it's like, if you can still get the job done, still execute on a high level, be transparent, check the boxes, but like not do the things that we've been doing. Like that's where I've been seeing the biggest opportunities. Is like, I'm not going to compete with Wyden and Kennedy at the end of the day. And I'm not going to compete with some, you know, whatever, local videographer doing retainery stuff. But it's like, there is this other opportunity opening up in that sort of mid-level commercial world of like people who are willing to wear a few hats, do a little bit of a hybrid thing, who can execute on social and longer form deliverables, who can pull in photo. Like there is this whole weird world that most of the traditional systems just like, we can't do that without having 30 people. And if you can, people are like, oh, you're our golden goose. So that's one of the things I've been seeing, but I'm curious too what you're seeing as far as like in this shift, what's separating the people who are drowning from the people who are thriving?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there are so many things I want to like respond to on what you just said. I think one thing really quickly is that oftentimes, like they're hiring you for a reason, right? They're hiring you because you know more than they do about production. Otherwise, they'd be doing it themselves. And if you know more, you're obviously an expert. And like they're paying for you to help lead and help guide them. And sometimes, especially like if you're working with an agency, or even if it's direct to client, and they have maybe like account people that you're working with, all they need is the explanation that they can then relay back to their client.
Right.
They don't have the language. They don't have the why. They don't have the context. And so sometimes, you know, just you sharing that exactly how you described a minute ago is all they're looking for, but they don't ask for it. They don't ask for it. They don't know that's like what they actually need sometimes. So you taking the initiative and really, really stepping into your authority and into your leadership and sharing your genius in that way, beyond just the making of the image, is literally like, that is what will set the people that are drowning apart from the people that are thriving. You're going to be in the thriving category. And I would agree with you. I think that there is a lot of that kind of like middle market opportunity right now. There's still like, I'm still seeing plenty of board flow. I'm seeing plenty of big budget jobs coming through for my clients, multi 6-figure jobs. Like they're still there. They are there. But there's this really nice sweet spot where I'm seeing a lot of volume ticking up in like the $1 to $200,000 range. That like, I'm like, if you're there and you're inserting yourself into these conversations and you're building and nurturing these relationships, like you can like claim all of that to be yours. If you are, like you said, willing to, you know, wear maybe a few more hats and to break free from like the conditioning that like there's only one way to do this. There's literally not. There are a million freaking ways to do any project. And a perfect example of this is, I was talking with some of my clients yesterday and we were talking about spec work. And one of the questions that I got was like, cause we were talking about like how to package it up and how to present it and all of that. And one of the questions that I received was like, okay, well in the BTS, if they're just like seeing me and my buddy and like, that's it, but the quality of what we actually produced and created is like top tier, like, are they going to like question us? Cause it's like just the two of us, like, are we green? But then the work looks really good. And like, so there's this like internal mental battle. And I'm like, no. If you have a client that looks at you and perceives you that way, like that's not the client you want to be working with.
Right.
You want to be working with the client that sees that and believes, damn, like they can do a lot with a little. They are highly proficient in what they do. They make beautiful work, and like you have to be a problem solver. And if you have clients that can't think that way, then like run. Like you don't want to be with them.
Well, and I feel like to that point, I feel like that was a thing for a while, and it probably still is in certain areas. But like I remember, this was probably 10, 11 years ago now, talking to a buddy who was doing a pretty big commercial campaign. And it was one of these like, we're going to set up 7 strobes and all this stuff and kind of do the dog and pony show. But he was like, the real secret is the pocket wizards are set up so that only one's actually firing on camera. So we're faking this whole thing that looks like a big production to justify cost or whatever else it is, you know, but like everything's on a 1/10 of a second delay. And as you're watching it, it looks like they're all popping, but only one's actually playing in the image. I was like, that's really clever. And I kind of fucking hate it. And so like, yeah, like we want to show up professionally. We want to be, doing things well. But to your point, I think also general client awareness has gone up enough that it's like, oh, we don't always need all of that. And there are some times that we do. But, even little things like this was back at 2021. We were doing a big project that involved a ton of walk and talks. And it was like, the autofocus is better than an AC at this point. And it's cheaper and it saves us an extra person and a focus puller and all this stuff every day. And over the course of this project, that's probably going to save us $10,000, $15,000. And like, it's the best move for the project. And I think that's one of the interesting things to me is like, okay, where are we finding these edges and finding, people who can fit in and really wanting to, for me, I feel like I already can hear the people who are like, oh, you're taking jobs away from people and whatever else, or, oh, you're shrinking things. And, it was Jason Adams and I had a conversation and that clip went kind of viral where he was talking about like, I don't always need a 5-ton, and he's like, sometimes we just need a van. And there is a certain contingent of, internet gaffers who are like, oh, classic director telling us what to do. And my response is that like, that's a thing that happens, right? But like, at least for myself and at least for Jason, you're dealing with people who do have a very tight connection to the actual work, who are very aware of what the actual crew is doing. It's not some director in a corner office being like, that doesn't sound important. And we're all trying to find these edges, find these ways that we can come in and give our people reasonable days, give our people clear expectations, pay people well for their time. And that's one of the places that like I've gone to people before and been like, hey, we can go like have another set of hands that we don't really need. Or if everyone's willing to have that little extra 10% of slush, like we can make sure we hit everyone's rates and more, and it's like, would you rather us have an extra body that we don't really need? Or would you rather everyone be all hands on deck? And I find that most people go all hands on deck there. And so those little places to pull edges, it's like, I've been joking for a while now. And I know, again, this is like a specific market, but it's like, if you were a sound op in a moderate sized market with a solid interview lighting setup, you could crush. Because the number of people who are just looking for like a sound lighting swing to do like 2 talking heads in a day. And it's like, it's hard to justify a gaffer and a sound op and whatever else. But I was like, if you can do sound and you can set up lights, and all the union people will be like, this is the end of the world. This is the apocalypse. And I'm like, you can walk with $2 to $3 grand easy all day and be booked all the time. And like, but that's okay. So this is kind of a tangent, but I'm curious because it comes back to something you were saying. I find that it's fascinating that for being often so proud of our creativity, our like business is the least creative place for us. Everyone just kind of looks around at everyone else and goes like, what's the standard? And I understand also the need for some degree of standardization, especially on the high level, right? Where it's like you get in a big union, things just have to be sort of blanketed. But it's like, especially in all this new market that's opening up, it's like, you can do anything. You can sell people anything, you can build anything, you can package it, you can position it, and there's all these new opportunities to step into. And for a lot of people who have even traditional skill sets like myself and traditional experience, it's like you can go fight in the churn. And again, there is that work. It's not necessarily a churn. I don't mean to speak like ill of it, but it's like there's this whole blue ocean over here, man, of stuff that just like that world is not touching at all. And I'm curious for you and like the people you're working with, how much are you seeing people sort of swimming towards the like traditional North Star, and how much are people building sort of new little kingdoms and ways of operating inside this work?
Yeah. More of the latter, But I think that's because I attract a certain type of person to the spaces that I hold. I'm not interested in resistance. I'm not interested in, convincing or trying to convince people of things. I'm interested in people that can have an open mind and see it for what it actually freaking is. And what it actually is that needs have changed. Needs have changed. The way we work has evolved. It will continue to evolve. And like, just like you were speaking about, kind of like having these more hybrid roles. Even like the, shoots that I was EPing even as early as last year is when I really started to see that shift of like, okay, it's not just a swing. It might be a swing that like walks the line of 2 different departments entirely. Right. And there are people that were like, no, not doing that, not taking that job. And I'm like, okay, someone else will. And like, it's not to like shit on the foundations that this industry was built on. It's really just like, you know, you being fluid and adaptable. You have more than one gift. Like, everyone has more than one gift. Everyone has more than, you know, one little microcosm of genius to share. And I think what's really exciting about this, because you're like, you can kind of do whatever you want. It's like, you kind of can. You really kind of can. And for me, my point of view on that is like, that's really exciting because you get to almost pioneer a new way of doing things, and you can pioneer it in a way that also gives you the latitude and the opportunity to make this more of a life first business. Like you were saying a few minutes ago, it's like you're already hearing like all of the, you know, talk back to some of the stuff that you're sharing. And like, yeah, the things that I'm hearing on the same side of the coin is like, okay, you're getting a full rate, the size of the budget might be smaller, but then that means the volume of jobs that you need in order to hit whatever your revenue goal is to live the life that you want to live. Like all of a sudden you're working hard. So like I'm hearing all of that, but it's like, but volume doesn't always need to mean chaos. It doesn't always need to mean burnout.
Right. Well, and budget doesn't always equate to margin either. I think that's
Correct.
one of the like biggest sort of myths inside, especially I think of like below the line perspective on things. And that's probably like, I've talked to a lot of people about how like, to your point of that sweet spot, it's like sub 150 and even sub 100, but I think in the right situations, it sort of stretches into 150. Usually my experience is that there's a lot more room and freedom. And if you can execute with a really strong team, like there's a lot of time more margin that you can take on the table basically. But like the guys who I know who are doing a lot of really big bids, they're really scrutinized on line items. It's like there's more bureaucracy. There's all of these things going on that it's like, it's not always easier or quote unquote more creative or better money at the end of the day. It can be, but it's not necessarily. And so it's like, okay, like if we can go do a bunch of 50K projects with a 20, 30K walk away versus doing a 120 project with a 20, 30K walk away, are we really winning anything by fishing for the bigger thing? Like, again, there's a time and a place, but I think it's really easy to get stuck in that sort of bigger is always better mindset. And yeah, it's like for me, I mean, the last few years, it's like I'm someone who's really valued my lifestyle, my fitness, my other creative endeavors. And so I've always had a hard time relating to the people who are like, here's how to maximize scale. And it's like, dude, the way I've lived my life is that like, I love knowing that I can do one thing and fuck off for the rest of the month if I want to. Like, that's a really good place to be. And there's some months that we drop the hammer and stuff comes in and it's great. But like, I've never felt the urge to be like, oh, I just need to like maximize take home at any given point, you know? And so, but I feel like that's another thing. And one of the things that I was curious to dig into with you is I feel like, this is my honest experience of myself in the world that we live in right now, is it's so easy to get sucked into just all the stuff you're hearing from everyone else all the time. It's so easy to get sucked into this implicit, like, I should be doing more, I should be bigger, I should be messaging about KPIs more and tightening my vertical positioning. And I've got to be, like, it's so easy to... It's funny because I actually think of it in terms of object fixation, target fixation, where it's like the mountain biking metaphor, right? Where it's like when you're looking at trees, all you're going to do is hit trees. And getting back to that point where it's like, can you see the space? Can you hear the space? Can you come back out of the world of like the traditional identity limitation that sound is like a highly isolated, highly specialized thing, and go like, heresy, I know. It's not that hard to learn how to run interview audio. I could do that. I can add that into my skill set, and now I can go pull that over with this thing. But like, it's so easy to get caught into the people who are yelling the loudest and being like, oh, the way for me to be relevant must be to imitate that or to follow that, and to get back into this reactive state of hearing whatever are often largely anecdotal sample sizes of like what the algorithm's giving us or whatever. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, big budget doesn't work anymore. Creative, people don't do creative. It's all just shitty social media, iterative stuff, like whatever it is. And it's like, a lot of the time, none of that's true. but how do you get back to like what is true, what's relevant to you? And then as you're sort of declaring your direction moving forward, not getting stuck in the object fixation world and actually going like, here's what's resonant to me. Here's where my soul feels like it can show up. Here's where I'm willing to step out into my own unique set of skills and into the potential scrutiny of like some people, you know, I'm sure there are some people who are like big budget agency DPs who are like, the stuff Evan does is silly and doesn't make any sense. And it's like, that's fine, but I love it, you know? But like, I feel like that's so much of what our work together I saw and what I see in you. And so like for someone listening to this who's just in the white noise of it all and in the sky is falling, how do you get back to that point of like, actually you're an incredibly capable, talented, gifted person with a network of relationships and a shit ton of opportunity in front of you, and like here's how to pull signal out of the noise again?
Yeah. So if you're finding yourself in that place and you're hearing all of the naysaying, you're hearing all of like work's dried up, blah, 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 all the toxic stuff that's out there. The first thing that I would say is to be aware that, anyone that's telling you that you should be doing something or you shouldn't be doing something, all that word should is the word could smothered in shame. That's all it is. It's loaded with fear. And so when you find yourself like hearing these narratives and like even starting to get pulled towards them or being like, well, maybe this is true. Maybe right. And you start taking like chihuahua action, which never helps anybody. The thing that I would always come back to is like, if you're feeling like that doesn't feel good, that means that there is something about that narrative that is not lining up with what you hold true to your values. Like, what are your values? Which of course have permission to change over time. But what are the things that you value personally and what are the things that you value in business? That's always going to be the thing to come back to when you feel like you're being challenged into thinking a certain way or believing a certain thing or subscribing to a certain like ideation of the state of things. Because I'm sorry, but your buddy over here, he's not the expert. Like, there's no expert. The only people that you should be listening to are the ones that are doing what you have dreamt to do, the people that have already been there, and yourself, and realigning with those things, because you're going to feel tension and you're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel all chihuahua-y when your values are being challenged by something else. So that's where I would start, because you have the awareness that it's happening. You're going to have physical sensations in your body. You're going to feel your heart racing a little bit. You're going to feel like I need to do something differently, when like, yeah, maybe you need to do something differently. But sitting around and waiting and expecting things to just go back to the way that they've always been, like, is never going to be, it's never going to be a reality. It's just not. So you kind of like just being in the position of deciding, this is how I'm going to handle and interpret what's going on here. I'm not going to let it penetrate like my internal state of like well-being. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to flex. Right? And then leaning into the community that shares a similar mindset as you do. When you're surrounding yourself with people that are so in a place of resisting opportunity and resisting potential, because it means you have to change and adapt. You want to be with the people that are like, let's go, let's figure this out, let's adapt, let's get this work done. We're not in this business just for shits and giggles. We're in this business because we love doing this work. How can we continue to grow and expand? We're not here to contract, right? So that might be a little philosophical, a little deep, but I hope it makes sense.
If anyone has ended up on here, I think philosophical is probably the bar is there. So there's a precedent for it. No, I love that. And I think that's like, to me, that's actually one of the core underlying messages for me inside like Challenger and how we show up in the stories we tell in general, is this idea that it's like, you are not here to follow some abstract, theoretical, predetermined, optimized thing. You know, it's like you're here to be you and to show up and to have your expression of that and to shift those stories, to let go of that stories, to be in the flow of your identity and following that sort of pathless path that each of us has. And I've been thinking about it a lot recently, even just like, you know, the metaphor back to evolution for me of like, evolution is not sitting here trying to figure out what the best bird is. You know, it's not like, eagle works best and now we're going to just like copy eagle over to every other bird. But I feel like culturally we have this weird tendency to kind of do that we like wait to see someone who has like a peak moment and then we go, oh, we should all go copy that. Like, what's their thing doing? What's their model? What's their whatever else? And it's like, one, that's not how strategy actually works. And like having a personal strategy, this whole like copy whatever someone else is doing that works in the moment, the minute that you do that, it already doesn't work. Like, it's the nature of game development. But nature is not evolutionarily evolving for linear singular optimization. And I feel like so often we fall into that trap of thinking in business and even in creativity that's like, well, what's the thing that's working on Reels right now? And it's like, who cares? I don't know. Like, I don't find that question especially compelling. And it's like, even so many of the ways that we frame things, this is kind of a digression, but like when we frame everything as like being scroll stopping, it's like, when did we lose like saying something meaningful and interesting? Because there are a lot of ways that you can just stop a scroll. There's a lot of ways that you can keep someone watching. I mean, I saw a video the other day where someone poured a glass of wine into a Chinese food to-go container. And it's like, I mean, it's a good hook in that it's just confusing, which will keep you watching it. But is it meaningful? Is it impactful? Does it drive me into my life in any meaningful way? Like, for me, no, and maybe for someone it does. But like when I come back to like, what are the actual base parameters of the business, of the way that we sell our services or whatever else, like what really matters here? What are the actual core things? And then take everything else off the table and be willing to look at it in a different way and to go, okay, like how can we show up here in service to our clients? How can we create mutual benefit? How can we create inspiration? How can we validate other people's values also instead of just eradicating them? There's a quote that I just saw again today that I love. It was basically that like it's much easier to tell stories of what separates people than what brings them together. And I think that's another just like general perspective thing I have on a lot of what's going on in social right now is like, to your point, it's a lot easier to say should. It's a lot easier to go like, this is what you should be doing. This is what everyone's missing out on. This is the 6 things that you really are going to fall behind if you don't do. And it's like, it works. It's emotionally hooky. It has leverage. It'll stop someone in their tracks. Is that the world we want to be living in? Is that how I want to show up? Is that what I would want someone else to be reflecting on me all the time? No. But like, where are we willing to actually step into those conversations with people as well? You know, that it's like, to me, art and creativity and what we're doing is bigger than just attention hacking, you know? And the minute that we digress to this lowest common denominator, it's the same thing that we would, you know, so many people were so happy to point fingers at big pharma or food or whatever else and be like, oh, you guys are just engineering this. So now we're going to make our hyper retention edited dopamine snacky thing where we make fun of big pharma for what they do. And then we go, does anyone like this? And they go, no, but it works. And it's like, well, that's exactly what everyone else is saying. That's exactly what so much of the great American crisis of right now, I think, is like, where's our intersection of economic leverage and values? Because there's a ton of stuff that works. But is it fun? Does it feel good? Is it a world you want to live in? And so, I mean, you want to talk about philosophical. We're really getting philosophical for a second here. But I'm curious too, in the just coming back to, as people who are going out there and navigating their careers, their creative voice, getting work, and navigating this reality of like, sometimes you do get put in a position where you have a brief that has a lot of dishonest stuff in it, or you have something that you're like, this just doesn't line up with what I want to be putting out into the world. And so like, how can people navigate that intersection of even validating their own values? Because I think a lot of times it's easy to go like, I'm just here to serve whatever the thing is, and as long as the check clears, it's fine. And that's a way of being, and I'm not going to shit on anyone for that, but I'm just curious sort of your perspective as you've gone through your career and working with people, like how do you fit vision, values, mission into this thing and not get sucked into the like, well, I'm just really good at getting people's attention game, you know?
Yeah. Ugh, this is such a good question. I think, you know, some people that decide to take on jobs that may be misaligned with who they are, with what their essence is, with what their values are, and they say yes because money and because like, who knows, like what their conditions are. Sometimes people feel like they have no other choice. I think you are always at choice. You are never not at choice, ever, 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 ever. So something like that, like who knows, maybe you have one conversation with that client and the script gets flipped, like literally. You know, I think, one thing though, one quality that is good to practice getting really, really comfortable with is just fearlessness. I, you know, for a time I was working at a global ad agency and there was stuff happening all the time where I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is like, this is not okay. And this is just me. This isn't everybody, but this is just me. Like I would at first like very timidly be like ask, like I would lean into curiosity and like try to position it as like me being curious of like, oh, why are we doing this? And like, oh, why is this like, oh, what's the story behind this? And like, what's the, you know, give me more to open up the dialogue. And then position myself to be like, we should do something different. We should not be doing this. But it takes fearlessness to do that, to be willing to stand up to a point of view that you don't share with someone else.
Right.
And that's not something that can necessarily be taught. It's just something that you have to trust in yourself, that you have a point of view, you think a certain way, and it can be and feel really, really scary when it doesn't align with the person that's going to put money in your pocket. It feels so scary.
Well, and that's back to the always having a choice thing, right? It's like, it is the minute that you commit to that, because yes, I've also been like, I'm just going to be curious and sneak over here, and that works sometimes. And I feel like I've been stepping more and more into like, no, I'm actually going to lead with this stuff. But it's scary because you know that you're closing the door to a lot of stuff. That it's like, once you have a reputation as like, I'm not okay with manipulating people, you know there's certain decks you're just never going to get. And whether we consciously know that or not, even as we're doing it, it's like subconsciously you know that there are people who I have worked with or could work with who are going to be like, eh. And, you know, I come back to that idea that it's like every big decision, it's like every revelation is an apocalypse, right? It's like every new life is a death. And so stepping into that bigger, fuller thing, stepping into that, like having a standard for how you show up, there is an aspect of death and apocalypse. There is an aspect of you're closing the door to a whole bunch of other stuff and choosing to sort of have faith that this thing that I value is going to be able to carry me through. And I think that's when I think of coming back to everything that we're seeing in the world, the opportunity for leadership, the opportunity to create a new way. It's like, how can we stand forward and speak boldly and openly and from a place of connection and community and love, not from a place of superiority or separation or, hey, you guys, again, shouldn't do this, but just being willing to go like, I'm not okay with this, and this is why. This is what I value, and this is, I think there is another way. And as the industry is shifting, as practices, I mean, you look at even not a political comment, but just like what's going on in the government and stuff now too. It's like there's kind of a big reckoning happening for a lot of people who have been pulling a lot of stuff for a long time. And the ability to step forward and go like, no, you know, clean hands, here's how we're going to show up. I think personally that there's a really big opportunity for a whole new generation of thought leadership that's going to come out of this, and a whole new generation of people who are going to be put into these positions where yeah, like people are going to start to go, no, we don't want to align with all the brands who have been consciously manipulating us on social media. Like there are going to be consequences for these things and for the people who have put them out there. And so it's like, how can you step into that, a little more of that fullness even now, and owning that and being there? And the hard thing is that whenever you're doing it, generally it's like, it feels like you're the only one, right? It feels like you're the crazy person. It feels like, no, we should just like say whatever we say in the copy that gets the most clicks because that's our North Star. And like, who am I? But you're not. There are people throughout all of history who have done this. There are great creatives throughout all of our industry who have done this. And there's a lot of people going through it right now. And it is scary, but it is worth it. And that's like, I come back to like, I can't tell you it's going to be easy, but I can tell you it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add to that too, is like, the way that you position yourself and your messaging around it is so important because when you, put out there who you are, what you represent, and you are steadfast with that, you are consistent with that, and over and over, you don't deviate. You're only going to start to attract the people that align with that. It's just like business energetics. It's just what's going to happen. How fast that happens, I couldn't tell you. It depends on, how hard you hit the pavement, not in an aggressive way, but in staying true to the things that you believe in and staying true to the type of work that you want to be calling in. But when you have these values and you have these points of view, and then 50% of the time you are still saying yes to the other stuff just because you feel like you have to, then the message is confused. Then you're going to get, maybe you get like one or two of those dream clients that feel really aligned. And then the rest are kind of like stuff that you're not excited about, jazzed about, believe in, like all of that. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage. It takes courage to be a pioneer because honestly, like that's what you're doing. This is one big experiment. Like if you look at it as like one big experiment, I'm going to put myself out there in this way. I'm going to get data and I'm going to get information in return. I'm going to get a lot of no's. I'm going to get a lot of closed doors. And then I'm going to have really rich conversations with some people that are going to pay me a fuck ton of money. And then that's going to act like compound interest over time. So it takes a lot of courage. Like that's all I could really say.
Well, and that's part of why I come back so often to this mythological lens, because I feel like there's aspects of this that are hard. They're hard to speak to in the most like literal sense. And so I had an example of a few weeks ago, had a call with a friend, and just one of those like pinch me moments where like opportunity came up and it's one of those things like you couldn't have dreamed of really happening. And it hit me and I was just sitting there crying and I was like, we did it somehow, like got from 18-year-old me being like, that would be really cool someday to actually being there. And just like reflecting on that journey and all the points in that journey where you kind of chose something that didn't make any sense. Like, it's like, oh, I went out and did this thing that like there wasn't any money in, but like I was able to show up fully in it, or I was able to develop these relationships, or said no to these deals. And, there's this weird melding of like, you're following the rational strategic thing to do, and you're kind of getting pulled into these weird directions that probably don't make any sense to anyone watching. Or like even me, like part of this opportunity is also doing a lot more like broader creative directing work, including like physical products and live music stuff. And, 5 years ago when I was like, I'm a commercial DP and started wading off in all these rabbit holes and people are like, what the fuck are you doing? And it's like, I don't know. I just know that this is going to be important at some point. Like this is something that we're going to work on. And, I was talking to my mom about it that night. And I was like, the only way I can explain it is kind of mythologically. It is one of those like Death Star runs, you're watching everyone dying around you and you like pull the headset off and you're just like, nope, my shot's not here yet. And everything is saying pull up and we're just going to stay in the pocket for like 5 seconds longer. And there the thing is. And I think that's just one of the things, that balancing point where it's like, we're constantly taking in data, right? Like we're constantly getting feedback, but you also kind of have to sift through that because you are going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of people who are like, no, why would I do the longer term play here? Why would I listen to your values? Why would I whatever? And it's like, it's feedback but it's not always feedback that needs to be internalized and adapted to. Sometimes it's feedback that does just need to bounce off of you, and you go, that's fine, that's not me, you know? And that staying in that place and learning to sense that difference between the true insightful feedback that you're getting from a trusted friend and the grumpy commenter on the internet who says that you should talk less. You know, it's like, even when I used to do, I remember part of the reason that I quit content was I got a phone call from a director who was like, you talk too much and that's why people don't like you. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll stop. And at this point, I'm like, I don't know why I ever listened to that person at all, you know?
Yeah.
But like, I feel like especially now, especially with everything that's going on right now, especially with all the fear, especially with all the uncertainty, especially with everything moving, it's like having that sense of internal authority and grounding and your willingness to sit in that, because there is a lot of big fucking storm going on. And if you take every wave as something personal, as something that you have to do, it's like you're going to go back into manic. Well, I guess I should do trends now. Well, I guess I'm a gear reviewer. Well, I guess I'm this. And it's like you have to have some sense of centering inside of that. And the people who are able to hold that are the people who I look to, and the people who I aim to surround myself with, and the people who I find are really able to continually show up in service of building something that's going to serve everyone better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I could not agree with that more. And a perfect like analogy here is just like, look at the stock market. In general, stock market tanks, everyone loses their shit, sells all their stuff off, and then stock market goes back up. And stock market tanks, and stock market goes back up. And it's the people that when it tanks don't lose their shit, and they realize this is a long-term game here. If this is not a short-term thing. The same thing applies to the work that we do in production, especially if you're also a business owner. This is a long-term game. You're not in it to just like get some quick wins and then bounce. You're in it for the long haul, usually. And so it takes exactly what you said, that centering, that groundedness, that trust, like, okay, feels a little scary. We're going to create some solutions, then it's going to bounce back, and then it's going to happen all over again. We've been here before. We have been here so many times. It's literally not different than any other time. So it's stamina and trust that you really have to root into, and like really drop those roots into trying to believe that and remember this isn't the first time and it won't be the last.